Jetzt geht es um Katzenbilder. Absolut. Und eine Frau, die ihre Dissertation sogar darüber geschrieben hat, die wird jetzt in den nächsten 60 Minuten darüber uns was erzählen. Wir freuen uns sehr. Kate Miltner, bitteschön.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you so much for coming to my talk. I know that it's late and everyone's probably excited to get to the bar, so I promise to make this as entertaining as possible. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope that you find what I have to say this evening to be interesting. Quickly before I get started, the hashtag for this talk is #CatPublica, if you feel like tweeting your comments. So the title of my talk on this program is Cat Memes, but I'm actually only going to be talking about lolcats because that is what I did my research on. So for those of you hoping to hear about Nyan Cat or Keyboard Cat or Maru or any of the other internet famous cats, I am sorry to disappoint you. I know, boo, but I promise you that you will see a lot of lolcat images over the course of my talk, so hopefully that will make up for it. So just so you know what you're in for over the course of the next hour, I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the background of my research and how that came about. Then I'll be talking about the findings and why those findings are meaningful. Towards the end, we're going to have a little bit of a quiz, and then I will open it up to questions if there are any. So also, this talk is a deep dive into a cultural phenomenon, and so I assume some basic familiarity on your part with the internet and internet culture. I was told that you were an expert internet-loving audience, so hopefully that will work. So over the course of the past year and a half or so, I have earned a bit of a reputation as the internet's biggest cat lady. Everyone assumes that I am totally obsessed with cats and that this is why I decided to study lolcats. And actually, that could not be farther from the truth. I am actually allergic to cats. I can't get near them, and I'm actually more of a dog person. So why study lolcats? OK, well, this is a good question. And to answer properly, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me. So I have been hanging out on the internet for a long time. I made my first website in 1997 when I was a teenager. It was an X-Files fan site. Are there any X-Files fans out in the audience? Woo! Anybody who was part of the web ring back in the 90s? Is anyone still part of the web ring? All right, yes, we have one person. Good, OK. So this was one of my 2 fan sites, which is a sight to behold, really. But my early involvement with that particular internet community planted a seed that ended up sprouting about 10 years later. I had always been interested in what people did online, particularly from a cultural perspective and a content generation perspective. So I started blogging in 2005, and through that became involved in the new media community in New York City, which at the time was one of the hubs of like the Web 2.0 movement. And I found all of that to be really exciting and ended up parlaying my early involvement with many of the major social media platforms into a job as a social media strategist for big international brands like Samsung. I'd been working in advertising for a while and wanted to combine my career with my personal interests. But after a while, I realized that I was more interested in why people did what they did online than what they were doing. So I wanted to look under the hood, so to speak. So I picked up and I moved to London to do a master's in the Media and Communication Department of the London School of Economics. And while I was there, one of my professors said something that in retrospect seems rather intuitive, but was a total revelation for me at the time. She told us that when we look at media text and media phenomena, we shouldn't look at the text itself, but at the reaction to the text. So what she meant by that is when something is really popular, even if it seems silly or frivolous or low culture, we need to look at why it is popular, because something about that particular piece of media has hit a nerve and is fulfilling some sort of function for people. So when it came to pick a topic for my dissertation research, I decided to take that bit of wisdom and apply it to something that fascinated me, which was internet memes. Being a little bit clueless and naive about the whole research process, I originally wanted to understand how all memes worked, which is pretty funny to me now because understanding the overall phenomenon of internet memes is a bit much even for a PhD thesis, not to mention a master's dissertation. So after some gentle guidance from my advisor, I decided to pick one meme to study, and I landed on lolcats. I picked lolcats for a variety of reasons. One, they've been around for a while, almost a decade at this point, which is an eternity in internet time. And may I just say, the fact that lolcats have been around for that long kind of makes me feel old. Maybe not as old as that cat, but definitely old. Secondly, lolcats were the first meme to cross over into mainstream culture and really make it big. They were, and I still think that they are, kind of emblematic for internet culture as a whole. So just a little bit of a side story about that. This past weekend before I came here, I was presenting at Media in Transition 8, a conference at MIT that's put on by the Comparative Media Studies Department. During one of the plenary sessions on Saturday, one of the panelists invoked lolcats as an archetypal example of online content creation. He said something about lolcats on the barricades. And as soon as he did that, the Twitter back channel went absolutely crazy and started pinging them around like crazy. So I still think that they hold that position as a reigning piece of internet culture. So my approach to the whole thing was phenomenological, which is to say that I was basically trying to understand what was going on with lolcats in a broad sense. Going back to what my professor said, I wanted to understand what it was about lolcats that struck a nerve, why people liked them so much, and what it was about them that basically supported and encouraged almost a decade's worth of popularity. So I decided to talk to people who like lolcats. As my advisor said, if you want to know what people think about something, you have to ask them. So I recruited people through the internet. I put up a notice on my blog. I posted stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, pretty much any social media platform that I could get my hands on. And I ended up talking to about 40 people from around the world who were willing to talk to me. I conducted 6 focus groups, 4 of them in person, and then 2 online using Google Hangouts. Oops. Sorry. Okay. So I have to say, I have never had so much fun doing academic work. It got me totally hooked for life. I got to talk to people about lolcats for hours. It was totally awesome. People brought their cats to the online focus groups, which was amazing. And I was like, this could be my life. I could do this for a job. Okay, I'm totally sold. But not only was the actual process really fun, but the results were fascinating. So about a third of the way through the project, after I had looked at hundreds, possibly thousands of lolcats, I hypothesized that the reason that people loved them so much was because we were basically laughing at ourselves through them. I mean, I cannot tell you how many lolcats I saw that were about hangovers. I mean, literally hundreds of them. And I was right that that is definitely part of it. But really, it's only the tip of the iceberg, and the full picture is actually much richer than that. So the great thing about being one of the first people to study something is that you get to sort of set the stage. You get to report things that might seem obvious to people who regularly interact with the phenomenon you're studying, but is pretty much news to everybody else, academia. So the first thing that I found is that the lolcat audience is not one single group. Within my participant base, there were 3 groups, and they all interact with lolcats slightly differently. They have a different relationship to them. Now, the presence of these particular groups that I'm about to talk about is definitely bound up in my sampling process. It is distinctly possible that there are more than these 3 groups, but that they weren't represented within the study because they didn't respond to my call for participation. But nonetheless, my results provide pretty strong evidence that these 3 groups represent important constituencies within the lolcat audience as a whole, and I'm going to actually test this out with you guys in a minute. So group number 1 is the cheese friends. Cheese friends and cheese peeps are how community members are referred to on I Can Has Cheeseburger, the site that popularized lolcats. These users tend to be female and older, and their original interest in lolcats generally stems from their love of cats. They mainly congregate in two places, the comment section of I Can Has Cheeseburger, and also their own community blog, which you can see here, called the Cheesetown Crier. The second group is what I called the meme geeks. Meme geeks are internet culture enthusiasts. They are predominantly male. They were about 2/3 of my sample, and they're younger. They were in their 20s and 30s. And for the meme geeks, lolcats' appeal is rooted in their place in the meme canon, their historical place in meme and internet culture. And the third group is what I call the casual users. These people aren't really enthusiasts per se, the way that the other two groups are. They enjoy lolcats, but they mostly engage with them at work, when people send them via email and on social networking sites like Facebook. They mostly consume them instead of creating them, and their engagement is more passive, and arguably they're less emotionally invested than the other two groups. Okay, audience participation time. We're going to do a little experiment because I'm actually curious, and you're the largest group that I've talked to about this so far. So you all like lolcats, yes? Woo, okay. So show of hands, and this isn't going to work as well as I thought because I can't see you that well, but out of the groups that I mentioned, how many of you would say that one of those groups applies to you? Just raise your hands. Okay. All right, so how many cheese friends do we have out there? 2. All right, way to represent cheese friends. Okay, so how about the meme geeks? Okay, a little bit more. What about the casual users? Okay, big group. Okay, so for those of you who didn't raise your hand, who aren't in one of those groups, what would you say your user type is? Does anybody want to volunteer? Microphone? How about you right there? Really? I didn't get that many hackers. Well, I guess part of the meme geeks, but I didn't get that many hackers in my groups. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. I got you covered, don't worry. Yes, okay. So my second finding is that lolcats are operating as a genre. And this means that not only are the form and structure of the lolcat distinct, but they have rules and conventions that need to be followed. So for the lolcats, these revolved around the font, where the text was placed, the subject of the image, linguistic syntax, which basically means lol speak and getting that right, how the animal was characterized, and intertextuality, so what references were made to other things, games, TV shows, movies, other memes, et cetera, et cetera. So adherence to the generic conventions of the lolcat was really important for the people in my groups, as I'm sure you can understand. But all my participants made it very clear that it was most definitely possible to get a lolcat wrong. And when that happened, it basically ruined it for them. And I'll come back to the larger implications of that in a moment. So the third major finding, which really surprised me at the time, is that people use lolcats to both express their feelings and to connect to each other. So users in all three groups reported both sending and receiving lolcats as a form of emotional expression, particularly as reactions to things, situations that they or their family or their friends were going through. Caring, embarrassment, frustration, sadness. It was all there. And one participant even told me that he would archive lolcats that he liked so that he could use them in future situations as reactions to things. So people used them as birthday cards, as calendars, as gifts. One woman told me that her mother framed one and gave it to her sister for her birthday. But people also use lolcats to do what Dana Boyd calls social steganography, which is basically targeting a private message to an intended audience or recipient, but doing it publicly. This is also known as subtweeting. This is the term that has been coming around lately. So for example, instead of saying, I'm having a bad day on Facebook and Twitter, people would post lolcats instead, knowing that certain friends would know what that meant, and they would reach out to them and comfort them. So it was kind of like sending up the cat signal. So finally, it became very clear that humor is a very important part of lolcats. What a surprise! But there were two main types of humor that lolcats traffic in. One is identification humor, which is best explained as that is funny because I do that, or that is funny because someone or something I know does that. And the way that this manifested was mainly through what I called anthropomorphic distancing, which basically allowed people to distance themselves enough from their own behavior and foibles to laugh at it in cat form. So the other type of humor was in-jokes. Everybody liked lolcats that made references that they understood. They really liked being in on the joke, feeling like they were part of an exclusive group or little club that got it, whether that was a reference or, in some cases, lol speak. And this is important, but I'll come back to why in a minute. So, great. We've got all of these things. We've got humor, we've got groups, we've got fonts and all of that. So what is the bigger picture? So how do all of these things come together and add up to something greater than the sum of their parts? So let's go back a bit for a minute. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that interested me about lolcats was their longevity. What it was allowed them to last as long as they did, particularly when other memes often have such a short life cycle. And the answer to this is that lolcats transferred across multiple communities, and as they moved, they took on new meaning, particularly for the enthusiast groups. So specifically, lolcats went from being the province of 4chan and forum culture to being something that was more frequently associated with the cheese friends. So a little bit of backstory here for those of us who are not 4chan enthusiasts or lolcat enthusiasts. Lolcats originated in forum culture. They started appearing on Something Awful in 4chan around 2005, 2006. Now, a quick note about the relationship between memes and 4chan. As some of you clearly know, 4chan, and particularly 4chan's B-board, is responsible for some of the most well-known memes and meme formats from the past few years. So you've got lolcats, you've got rickrolling, you've got demotivational posters, advice animals, and so on. One of the reasons that 4chan became a meme factory was because creating original content and participating in meme culture was a key element of belonging to that community, and for their members, a source of subcultural capital and a sign of in-group membership. So forum culture is notoriously androcentric, and often aggressively so. I did not do a full historical content analysis of lolcats from that period, but some of the meme geeks who enjoyed lolcats when they were the province of 4chan, before they were adopted by more mainstream audiences, mentioned that lolcats had a more mocking tone in that time, that the humor was more aggressive, more rooted in schadenfreude, or in one of my participants' words, ha ha ha, that cat is stupid. So more about lulz than lols, if you're gonna, put it more succinctly. So this is where I Can Has Cheeseburger comes into play. So not only did they bring lolcats to a more mainstream audience, they also developed one of the earliest lol generators, which enabled pretty much anyone to get involved. So in the early days of image macros, the ability to correctly follow the format of a meme required not only the knowledge of the genre, but a certain level of ability with Photoshop or another form of photo editing software. But with these lol builders, anyone could create a lolcat, basically democratizing the creation process. This allowed other groups with less technical proficiency to adopt lolcats and claim them for their own. So for the meme geeks, this was when the lolcats stopped being fully representative of their community. However, one thing that's really important to note is that it wasn't just the loss of exclusivity that made lolcats less cool for the meme geeks. Many memes have entered into the mainstream and still retained a preferred place in the meme canon, so to speak. And that's not even exclusive to meme culture. That's just part of the subcultural lifestyle, the whole, like, I liked the band before it was cool, man, and now they're mainstream, they've sold out. So in this case, though, for the meme geeks, it was who specifically had adopted lolcats that made lolcats problematic for them. So quite a few meme geeks called out the fact that when mums and older women, the type of lolcat users represented in the cheese friend category, had started to adopt them, lolcats were over for them. So the reason that this was such an issue, I think, is that lolcats were adopted by a group that is, from a values perspective, very different from the subculture where lolcats originated. This picture, for context, is from Cheeseburger Night at the Mariners, which is a meetup where the cheeseburger community all goes to a baseball game together in Seattle. So not only was this group older and feminine, which would arguably be problematic for a culture that has had problems with misogyny, but also that this group ascribed meaning to lolcats that was antithetical to its origins. So for the cheese friends, lolcats most definitely do not have aggressive connotations. For them, lolcats and the community that has sprung up around them is a place to be, as one cheese friend emailed me, a place to be safe and kind on the internet. So I mentioned the Cheesetown Crier earlier, the community blog. This is a place where cheese friends and cheese peeps discuss some pretty heavy things: job loss, spousal illness, the death of their pets, like major life problems, and they're mostly doing this in lol speak, and they're getting a lot of support. It's an emotionally supportive space that is basically a haven from the type of aggressive flaming and trolling culture that is represented by 4chan and Something Awful, and where lolcats originally came from. So the thing that I found to be most interesting is that this sort of battle for the lolcats came down to lol speak. So incidentally, this is a screenshot of the master's thesis of Jordan Leffler, a woman who got her master's in linguistics from Louisiana State University by analyzing lol speak. So I am not the only lol scholar out there, I would just like to state for the record. But so both groups, the meme geeks and the cheese friends, claimed lolspeak as theirs and used their knowledge of lolspeak to erect group boundaries and to claim the canonical or real version of lolcats. So meme geeks claim lolspeak as their own because of its internet heritage. It has roots in internet argot and leetspeak. For the cheese friends, though, proficiency in lolspeak is a gauge of belonging. Because the rules of the language are created and reinforced by the community, speaking fluent lol, which is a direct quote from one of my participants, is a sign that you have spent a lot of time in the community and you are invested in it. Basically, you've paid your dues. So what you have here is a case of the same content, specifically the same small generic element being claimed by two groups to essentially erect boundaries against what each other represents, which I don't know about you, but I think that that is a lot of cultural work being done by some purportedly silly pictures of cats. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing. I don't know about you guys. Well, hello. Scholars like Jean Burgess and Henry Jenkins have pointed out that when you're dealing with user-generated content, it's not just the content per se that is significant, but the body of practice that are conducted and performed around these cultural artifacts. Jenkins specifically has argued that the same piece of content can often do very different things for different groups, and I think that lolcats is a clear example of that. So my friend Hector Postigo, he's a professor in the media department at Temple University, and he has talked about the gravity wells of culture. So in astrophysics, a gravity well, pictured here, is the gravitational potential field around an object or a body, how much the object's gravity can potentially pull in other objects. So I would argue that lolcats are a cultural gravity well. When we make lolcats, we are not just tossing some impact font on a picture. We are creating culturally significant artifacts that are inculcated with meaning, something that is more than just function, more than its use. It is in conversation with larger discourses and larger intentions. Perhaps more than ever, content and culture are being made by us. And it is the value and the meaning that we ascribe to these things, that we create, that make them important, no matter how silly or trivial they may seem. Lolcats are important because they are a venue for us to express our feelings, to participate in and belong to a community, to perform identity. These are serious, significant things that we are doing. So on that note, I'd like to close, before we get to even more audience participation, with a quote from Sherry Turkle that pretty much sums up my feelings about my research, which is, "Some are tempted to think of life in cyberspace as insignificant, as escape or meaningless diversion. It is not. Our experiences there are serious play, and we belittle them at our risk." So now I'm going to stop talking at you and hopefully get you guys involved with me a little bit. As a reward for sitting through the seriously serious part of my talk, we have the aforementioned quiz game part of the session. I was told that the Republica audience likes to get involved, and I figured that I'd bring some of that into this, given that it's the evening time, and hopefully you've already been taking advantage of the bar. So I present to you Republica Idlol, where you get to choose the favorite lolcat for Republica. Can I get a round of applause? Okay, so to help me out here, I'd like to call up a friend from the audience. Martin, are you here? Where's Martin? Uh-oh, there he is. All right, buddy. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to vote by applause volume. Very shortly, I'm going to introduce you to the 4 candidates for Republica. Whoops. Idlol. I'm losing my microphone. And then basically, Martin is going to act as the applause-o-meter, and whoever has the loudest applause wins the title. And then afterward, you can ask me questions. And that will conclude our session on cat memes. So, Martin, please join us on stage. Okay, so now let me introduce our contestants. I have gone through a lot of lolcats in my time, ladies and gentlemen, and I consider myself uniquely qualified to present our finalists to you this evening. We have Monorail Cat. A true classic, Monorail Cat has been even turned into an animated GIF, a true contender, and a real performer. Next, we have Ceiling Cat. A true god among cats, Ceiling Cat features prominently in the Lolcat Bible. He's also a bit of a creeper, watching you in your most private moments. Our next contestant is an upstart and relatively new to the famous cat scene. We've got Tartar Sauce, otherwise known as Grumpy Cat. Oh, wow, okay. I don't know, I feel like the race is already run. Grumpy Cat does hate everything, including winning, so let's see how she does. Finally, we would not be anywhere without this famous cat. Originally found modeling in a Russian cat food ad, this cat has arguably transformed the entire internet. Give it up for Happy Cat. We have some strong contenders, ladies and gentlemen, so we're just going to do it in a row. So, are we ready? Yeah, totally. Okay, so, Monorail Cat. Who wants Monorail Cat to win? Ceiling Cat, for all you creepy people out there. Okay, Grumpy Cat. All right, we got one more. And Happy Cat. Okay, so clearly our winner is Grumpy Cat. Thank you all for participating. So now as a reward, serious researcher will answer your very serious questions. Okay, how are we doing this? You right there. I don't know where the microphone is.
Wait a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait a second, please. Hi, I was just wondering if you have an explanation why exactly it's cats that are so famous. Why isn't it dogs or owls or bunnies?
Okay. So actually, I'm not like, I haven't done it. I've read some animal literature, but basically the impression that I have gotten is the reason that people, there are two stories. One of the participants in my group told me, and I have no idea how true this is, but it's a good story anyway, that cats became big on 4chan because they were considered to be the anti-porn. So people would ask, like, you know, give me your grossest fetish porn, and people would troll them by sending them pictures of cats. And then somehow cats acquired their own currency, and then people would be like, hey, can I please have your fetish porn? I will give you a picture of a cat. So I don't know how true this is. This is what someone said. I could be very well have been trolled by him with that story, but I think it's good, so I'll tell you anyway. From a little more serious perspective, I actually think that it is because it's easier for us to project ourselves onto cats because cats are perceived to have more agency than dogs. Dogs are basically like, I love you, I love you, I love you, and cats are kind of more not like that. And yeah, so I mean, but also cats have more facial expressions. Dogs, basically, I mean, I don't know. I'm a dog person. I love dogs, but it's a lot harder to post your or to push your foibles onto a dog because they really do. They love people, generally speaking. So, you in the front.
My question just has to do with your findings on the font.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, do you think if anything else besides impact had been used, let's say Comic Sans or something, would lolcats still have achieved their longevity and popularity?
So I don't think that it's a causal thing. I actually don't know entirely. Okay, so I think what happened was impact font was the font that people chose, and so therefore it was the font that people came to expect. So the people in my groups basically said, well, if it doesn't have impact font, then it's not a meme, and it's not a lolcat. So basically the fact that impact was chosen quite a bit in the beginning, I mean, some of the older lolcats actually don't use impact, or they have like they use Arial or like another blocky font, but impact ended up sort of becoming the default font, and that's what people came to expect. People were saying, I see that font and I just expect something funny. And that might be because of the lol builder. I mean, lol builders have a default font of impact most of the time, and I think that it's kind of like a co-constitutive thing where impact became the thing, and so that was built into the lol builder, and then lol builders reinforced the fact that impact was the thing. Does that make sense? Okay. Any more questions? Oh, you have the mic, so you win. 1,000 internets to you.
Okay, I try that. I has questions.
You has questions. I has answers, hopefully.
What is your next project and how can we participate?
How's my next project? So my next project is I'm going to be studying an anti-fan hate blog community. So there is a blogger in the US who has a very devoted group of people who dislike her actively, but it's more complicated than that. It's not just a bunch of ranting lunatics trying to make this woman's life miserable. There are some very complicated cultural practices that are going on there. So I'm basically trying to understand what that is. So anytime I have another audience-related project that's not specific to one community, I will ask the Republica organizers to send out a call to you guys so that you can participate, because that would be awesome. Huge sample size. Yay. Any others? Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was wondering if you have any super serious scientific explanation for why Grumpy Cat is so popular.
Ooh, I would have to talk to people who like Grumpy Cat. I actually think that Grumpy Cat is a she, that she just is funny. looking. I don't. You know what? No, I do not have a super scientific explanation as to why people like Grumpy Cat. I'm not even going to try with that one, but thank you. All right, do we have any more questions? More questions?
Oh,
we do. Okay.
Hi. Always, or all the time, I look at these funny pictures with cats.
All the time? Like all the time?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
And I always wonder where all these pictures come from. And I can imagine that there is a scene of professional lolcat producers. Did you find something like that? So people that take their cats and bring them or make them to pose for funny pictures in front of the camera. Is something like that out there, or all the pictures are made by accident, or how is it?
You know, I did not run into any like professional photographers who were trying to like get in on the lolcat game. This is not to say that they don't exist. Again, sampling and people who responded to my thing. But I actually think that what makes lolcats so appealing is the fact that they seem to be mostly snapshots. The ones that people like the most are the ones that are, you know, more raw, less professional. You know, a lot of people would say, oh my God, I love that cat picture because my cat does that all the time. People really loved the lolcats that had cats like sleeping on computers because they're warm, or like sleeping on Wiis because they're warm, because cats like to sleep on warm things, and people thought that was funny. So yeah, so I think that part of the appeal is the fact that they aren't professional. I think that's what makes it so awesome. Hi.
Could you help us out and sort of give a definition between the women that are very passionate about cats in the forum and proper cat ladies? Thanks.
Ooh, okay. So actually, that's really interesting. So proper cat ladies. I mean, that is definitely an opinion thing. But it's interesting that you brought that up. Because the gender thing is really kind of a thing. Like cat ladies, some women positively identify as cat ladies and are like, woo, yes, cat lady, like, hear me roar. But generally speaking, cat ladies are kind of, it's seen as a pejorative term, sort of like, oh my God, those crazy cat ladies. And I heard that a lot from the meme geeks. You know, it's like, oh my God, those crazy women who speak in lol speak all the time, like, they must have like 50 cats and live alone and be miserable, right? So, I mean, I don't, the name, like the cheese friends and the cheese peeps, like that's a label for people who are active in the ICANN-Has community. There's probably some overlap between cat ladies and cheese peeps, but I can't conflate the two. I mean, I don't know, I can't give you an exact answer, but I think there is a difference between the community member, which is the cheese friend and the cheese peep, and then a cat lady, which is just sort of a generally pejorative term for women who like cats who are single and seem to be socially awkward. I mean, that's what I heard. So no offense to any cat ladies, if you positively identify as one.
Hi, I think my question is a bit off topic.
Okay.
But since you were mentioning the X-Files earlier on, I'm a huge fan.
X-Files, okay. I can't see you, but...
I got a Scully shirt.
Oh,
it's just
nice.
a coincidence. I was just wondering if you, by any chance, have also done academic work on the X-Files.
I have not, but there is a huge body of literature.
I know. I've written my master's thesis about it, so I thought...
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't done any academic work.
Maybe next time.
No, fan studies, I mean, what this is kind of related to fan studies. It's audience and reception studies, but I have not done any work on the X-Files. Actually, I feel like there's one of the reasons that I was interested in doing this work on lolcats is because no one had done any work on what I saw was like a really massive cultural phenomenon, and I got made fun of for it like all the time. So you guys are a remarkably friendly audience, but yeah, people have been very disparaging to that area of research.
Simple question.
Yeah.
With all your vast knowledge, do they still work on you? Or like, are they immune to, is the impact of the lolcat immune to knowledge?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
do they still work on you? Like, do they still make you laugh? Or is
Yeah,
like
they
your
totally do.
knowledge
Yeah.
function destroying the lolcat impact? You know?
No, it's funny. I actually found that I liked cats more after I was done with my research. I was kind of like, oh, you know, it's too bad that I'm allergic to cats because I would totally get a cat. And Jordan Leffler, the woman who did her master's on LolSpeak, she basically said, my data was always cute and it's still cute. So yeah, it didn't ruin them for me.
Hi.
Hi.
Another question about the images.
Yes.
You said that most of them are actually snapshots of some cats, but sometimes I look at these lolcats, I think, oh, that has to be Photoshop. This face, this can't be true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have Photoshopped cat images like holding lightsabers or something. Is there some, do you know something about the
Is there a distinction?
Yeah, between the Photoshopped lolcats and the non-Photoshop?
So actually so one of the things that I did in my research is my focus groups were incredibly fun. Like for the first half, I just sort of asked questions. And then the second half, I printed out all of these lolcats and basically had people look at them and talk about them and say what they liked about them and what they didn't like about them. Because it's kind of hard to sort of talk about humor in an abstract sense. It's a lot easier when you have stimulus. And one of the things that people said was that they didn't really like the ones that were clearly photoshopped. There was one that I used that it looked like the cat had been caught watching porn. And people thought, they were like, well, that's just really contrived. Like, clearly a cat would never do that, or that's not that funny. I mean, I think the thing is, it's like when cats are naturally being cats but seem like humans, I think that that's what makes it really appealing.
Normally, memes have their time and they run out after a time. Now, lolcats are going on for years now.
Yep.
Do you have an explanation for that? And do you see an ending time for the lolcat meme?
Well, I feel like I hope I addressed this, but basically the reason why lolcats have had their longevity is because they moved from community to community. So they basically moved from the meme geek, 4chan crew, people who are really interested in internet culture, and as soon as they lost their novelty or their social cultural capital, that's usually when you see memes dying off because they make it to the mainstream and they don't resonate on some larger level. But with the lolcats, they happen to go into a community of really enthusiastic people. So the cheese friends, I mean, they are basically, from what I can see, kind of keeping lolcats alive. I know that Cheeseburgers, I heard last weekend that Cheeseburger just laid off like half of their staff. Cheeseburger Networks, the company that runs ICANN and all of those websites. So I think that there's kind of a bit of a dip in terms of lolcats' ultimate popularity in terms of their peak, but I also think because they are a part of the meme canon, they were like the earliest, meme to kind of cross over into the mainstream, and it's what most people have seen when you say, oh, I do meme research, those pictures of the cats with the captions, people are always like, oh, right, those. So I think that that's why, they'll always kind of have a place. There's a place for us, lolcat people. Yes.
Yay. I can has the mic.
You can has the mic.
So I just wanted to say that lolcats have been around since before the internet because there were pictures taken during the 19th century, funny pictures of cats dressed up.
Harry Pointer.
Yes, exactly.
Harry Pointer.
So even they predate the internet and they're not going anywhere. Secondly, I wanted to say to that gentleman about the Photoshop pictures. They're also breaded cats, which are cats with bread on them.
Oh yes, inbred cats.
Yes. So those are, not made by Photoshop, but people that put pieces of bread on their cat.
Yeah.
And maybe you have a point to say about what that means about the relationship between those cat owners and their cats and how much those cats like that.
I don't. I mean, I'm not a cat owner, but I just imagine that people think it's really funny to put a piece of bread on their cat's face. I mean,
it's
I
hilarious.
think it's funny. So, yeah, I don't know. Some things are just silly and hilarious. I'm more interested, lolcats as an overall phenomena. It's what are the community practices that are building around these pieces of content. It's not just pictures of cats with captions on them, but the fact that people have been rallying around this content and building their own communities and enacting social, connection with, like, through these things. That's what makes them significant.
It's awesome that we can have this discussion here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really, really happy. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, we have another question in the back, I think. Is that a hand?
One
that is a
question.
hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Have companies used the lolcat phenomenon for commercial purposes? For example, for cat food ad or something?
Have I used?
No.
Have people?
No, commercial companies.
Have they?
Have they used the lolcat phenomenon?
Not. I haven't seen it actually. What I have seen is people using memes. So when I lived in England for 2 years and just moved back to Boston in November, and there was a huge Virgin ad campaign that used Success Kid for their telephone service, which was really interesting. So I mean, clearly they were trying to signal something. The other thing about a lot of the lolcats, especially the ones that are hosted on Cheeseburger, is that you can't actually use those for commercial purposes without clearing it with Cheeseburger. Cheeseburger owns that copyright. In order to make the Cheeseburger books that were made, Cheeseburger basically had to find the original users and get their clearance to put them in the book. And that's really difficult to do when, like, you aren't exactly sure what the source is and people create them and they don't have accounts. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess you could co-opt it and use it for commercial purposes, but I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know if we have any more questions, but if not, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Okay, Miltner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.